The Boy Who Chased the Rolling Stroller. The late afternoon sun blazed over the city, casting long shadows across the bustling streets. In a small neighborhood on the outskirts of town, 12-year-old Jamie Davis sat on the edge of the cracked sidewalk, tossing pebbles into a nearby puddle. His scuffed sneakers dangled above the curb, and his tattered backpack leaned against the fence behind him. It was just another ordinary day in his life, filled with the kind of mundane routines that came with growing up in a place where opportunities were scarce and dreams were often out of reach. Jamie's ears perked up as he heard the faint, rhythmic clatter of stroller wheels hitting uneven pavement. He glanced up to see a baby stroller rolling down the slight hill at the end of the street. At first, it seemed innocent, a casual stroll. But then Jamie noticed something was off. The stroller was moving too fast, and there was no adult nearby to guide it. A soft cry from the baby inside carried over the din of the neighborhood, sharpening Jamie's senses. His heart quickened as he saw the stroller veer toward the street. A heavy truck rumbled in the distance, its horn blaring as it approached the intersection at the bottom of the hill. Jamie's eyes darted around for someone, anyone, who might step in, but the street was eerily empty. Without a second thought, he sprang to his feet. The distance between Jamie and the stroller seemed to stretch infinitely as he sprinted, his legs pumping harder than they ever had before. The soles of his shoes slapped against the hot asphalt as adrenaline surged through his body. "Stop!" he yelled, his voice cracking with urgency. But the stroller kept rolling, faster and faster, the baby's cries growing louder with each passing second. Ahead, the truck's driver finally noticed the stroller and slammed on the brakes. But it was clear it wouldn't stop in time. Jamie pushed himself harder, every muscle in his body screaming for him to stop. But he couldn't. He wouldn't. Just as the stroller reached the edge of the street, Jamie lunged forward, his fingertips grazing the handle. With one final burst of strength, he grabbed hold and yanked it back toward the sidewalk. The wheels screeched against the asphalt as the truck roared past, its horn blaring angrily. The stroller jolted to a stop, and the baby inside wailed, its tiny fists waving in the air. Jamie collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping for breath. His chest heaved, and sweat dripped down his face, but he couldn't take his eyes off the stroller. Relief flooded him as he saw that the baby was unharmed. Before he could gather his thoughts, the sharp click of high heels echoed behind him. "Thank God," a woman cried, rushing toward the stroller. She was impeccably dressed, her designer blouse and skirt contrasting sharply with Jamie's worn clothes. Her trembling hands gripped the stroller as she knelt beside it, her face pale with panic. My baby, you saved him." Jamie sat up slowly, wincing as he felt the sting of scraped knees and palms. I just saw it rolling," he mumbled, unsure of what else to say. The woman turned her tear-streaked face toward him, her expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. You're a hero," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Before Jamie could respond, a large man in a black suit appeared behind her. He was broad-shouldered and stern-faced, exuding an air of authority that made Jamie instinctively shrink back. "Madam," the man said, his deep voice calm but commanding, "we need to leave now." The woman hesitated, her gaze lingering on Jamie. "But now," the man repeated, his eyes briefly flicking to Jamie before returning to the woman. Reluctantly, she stood, brushing off her skirt. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek card with gold lettering. "Take this," she said, pressing it into Jamie's hand. "Please, I owe you everything." Jamie barely had time to glance at the card before the man in the suit ushered her and the baby into a sleek black car parked at the curb. The car's tinted windows glinted in the sunlight as it pulled away, leaving Jamie sitting alone on the sidewalk, the card still clutched in his hand. As the adrenaline faded, Jamie became acutely aware of the murmurs around him. Neighbors had gathered, their faces a mix of awe and curiosity. "That was some gutsy move, kid," an older man said, nodding approvingly. Jamie shrugged, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. It wasn't a big deal. A big deal. An elderly woman scoffed, her hands on her hips. You just saved a baby from being flattened, and they didn't even say a proper thank you. Jamie didn't respond. He felt a strange mix of pride and unease as he stood, brushing off his clothes. The weight of the card in his hand felt heavier than it should have. He glanced down at it, his eyes scanning the embossed gold letters. Harrison Family Estate. Private line. That night, as Jamie sat at the small kitchen table in his family's modest home, he recounted the story to his mother, Gloria, and his younger sister, Lily. Their home was a small, cluttered space, filled with the scent of stew simmering on the stove. Gloria listened intently, her brow furrowed with worry. You shouldn't have put yourself in danger like that, she said, her voice tinged with both pride and concern. What if something had happened to you? Jamie shrugged, fiddling with the card. I couldn't just let the baby get hurt. Lily, barely 8 years old, looked up at him with wide eyes. Does this mean you're a superhero now? Jamie chuckled, ruffling her hair. Hardly. Later that evening, as the neighborhood settled into its usual quiet hum, Jamie lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The card rested on his nightstand, its golden letters catching the faint glow of the streetlight outside. Something about it felt significant, as though it carried the weight of something much larger than him. He didn't know that by morning, his life, and his family's, would never be the same. A black car comes to the neighborhood. The morning broke unusually quiet in the Davis household. The smell of breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, wafted through the air as Gloria hummed softly in the kitchen. Jamie sat at the table, poking at his eggs absent-mindedly, his thoughts still consumed by the events of the previous day. The golden card sat in front of him, its polished surface reflecting the morning sunlight. Lily, perched on the opposite chair, was busy scribbling pictures of her superhero brother in her sketchbook, grinning from ear to ear. You've been staring at that thing all morning, Gloria said as she set a steaming cup of coffee on the table. Her tone was light, but Jamie could hear the undertone of unease. What's on your mind, baby? Jamie shrugged, twirling the card between his fingers. I don't know, Mom. It just feels weird. Like, why give me this? Why leave like that, without even a proper thank you? And who even are these people? Gloria hesitated, her eyes flickering to the card. Harrison, she murmured, almost to herself. I've heard that name before. Big-time family. They own a bunch of businesses downtown, real estate, hotels, who knows what else. Jamie raised an eyebrow. Rich people, huh? Gloria nodded, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Rich and powerful. The kind of people who don't mix with folks like us. Maybe they'll call to say thanks, Lily chimed in, her voice chipper as she held up her drawing. It showed Jamie with a flowing cape, holding a baby high in the air. The sun shone brightly in the corner, and a smiling family waved in the background. Jamie chuckled. Yeah, right. But Gloria's unease deepened. People like them don't do things without a reason. Just don't get your hopes up, okay? The conversation was interrupted by the rumble of an engine outside. It wasn't the usual clatter of old cars that crawled through their neighborhood. This was different, smooth, powerful, and precise. Jamie and Gloria exchanged a glance, and Lily hopped off her chair to peek out the window. Mom, Jamie, look, Lily exclaimed, her voice brimming with excitement. It's a big, shiny car. Jamie stood and followed her to the window, pulling back the curtain. There it was, a sleek black car, polished to perfection, rolling down their modest street. The car's glossy finish reflected the sunlight, making it stand out like a diamond in a coal mine. It slowed to a stop right in front of their small weathered house, its presence commanding attention. Neighbors began to gather outside, their chatter growing louder with every passing second. Curious faces peeked from behind curtains, while braver souls stepped onto their porches for a better look. Jamie noticed Mr. Cooper from next door, leaning on his fence, muttering something to his wife. "What in the world?" Gloria whispered, her voice tight with apprehension. The car's door opened with a soft, deliberate click. From it emerged a man who looked like he belonged in a corporate office rather than on their cracked sidewalk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that seemed untouched by a single speck of dust. His shoes gleamed, and his hair was slicked back neatly. Everything about him screamed power and precision. Jamie felt an uneasy weight settle in his chest as the man approached their front door. He turned to Gloria, whose face had gone pale. "Stay here," she instructed, her voice firm. She smoothed her apron and took a deep breath before heading to the door. Jamie couldn't resist. He followed a few steps behind, peeking around the corner as Gloria opened the door. The man offered a polite smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Davis," he said, his voice low and measured. "Good morning. My name is Charles Dorian. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Richard Harrison." Gloria stiffened at the name. "What do you want?" Charles tilted his head slightly, his smile unwavering. "I'm here to personally express Mr. Harrison's gratitude for your son's heroic actions yesterday. It was truly extraordinary." Gloria's eyes narrowed. "And you couldn't just say that over the phone?" Charles let out a soft chuckle. "Mr. Harrison believes actions speak louder than words. He sent me here to deliver something, an expression of his thanks." He turned and gestured to the car. The back door opened, and another man, equally imposing, stepped out holding a sleek black briefcase. Jamie's curiosity burned as he watched from the hallway, his fingers gripping the wall. The man with the briefcase approached and handed it to Charles, who in turn extended it toward Gloria. "Please, accept this as a token of Mr. Harrison's appreciation." Gloria didn't move to take it. "What's in there?" Charles's smile didn't falter. "Simply an offer to improve your family circumstances. Mr. Harrison understands the challenges faced by hardworking families like yours. He hopes this will help." Gloria hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to slam the door. But curiosity won out. She took the briefcase, placing it on the small table by the door. Slowly, she unlatched it and opened it. Inside were neatly stacked documents, along with a folder containing a detailed property listing. Jamie, unable to hold back any longer, stepped into the doorway to get a better look. "What is this?" Gloria asked, her voice wary. Charles's gaze flicked to Jamie for a brief moment before returning to Gloria. "It's a deed to a home in the Evergreen gated community. A safe, comfortable neighborhood with modern amenities. The home is fully paid for and ready for you to move in at your convenience." The room went silent. Jamie's mind reeled. A new house. In Evergreen. It was the kind of place he'd only ever heard about. A world away from their creaky, cramped home. But something about the offer felt wrong. Gloria shook her head. This is too much. I don't understand. Why would Mr. Harrison do this?" Charles's smile thinned. "As I said, Mrs. Davis, Mr. Harrison values gratitude. Your son saved his child's life. He merely wishes to return the favor." Before Gloria could respond, Charles reached into his jacket and pulled out a card identical to the one Jamie had received the day before. He placed it gently on top of the briefcase. "Take your time to consider the offer. Mr. Harrison is a patient man, but he hopes you'll see this as the opportunity it is." With that, he turned on his heel and walked back to the car. The second man followed, closing the door behind them. The black car pulled away as smoothly as it had arrived, leaving the Davis family standing in stunned silence. Jamie finally spoke. "Mom, what are we going to do?" Gloria didn't answer. Her hands trembled as she stared at the briefcase, her mind racing with questions. Outside, the neighbors continued to murmur, their curiosity and envy palpable. That night, as the house settled into uneasy quiet, Jamie lay awake in bed. The golden card sat on his nightstand again, taunting him with its mystery. His mother's face at dinner had been drawn with worry, and his sister's usual cheerfulness had been subdued. Something about the offer, and the man who delivered it, felt off. Jamie turned to the window and looked out into the dark street. For a moment, he thought he saw the faint outline of a car parked at the far end, its headlights off but its presence undeniable. A shiver ran down his spine. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. Shadows of the Harrison legacy. The days that followed were anything but ordinary. The mysterious briefcase and the offer of a new home had cast a long shadow over the Davis family. Gloria remained tight-lipped, often pacing the kitchen in the quiet hours of the night, her face lined with worry. Jamie watched her, his unease growing by the hour. Something about the offer gnawed at him, a sense that it wasn't the benevolent gift it appeared to be. Even Lily, who was usually the bright light of the house, seemed subdued. Her cheerful drawings of her superhero brother were replaced with doodles of dark cars and towering gates. Jamie couldn't help but feel the weight of it all pressing down on their small family. One evening, Gloria finally called a family meeting in their cramped living room. She sat at the table with the briefcase open in front of her, its contents carefully spread out. The property deed, a letter bearing the Harrison family crest, and an envelope marked QONFIDENTIL. "I've been thinking about this," Gloria began, her voice steady but strained. "This offer, it's not just about gratitude. It's something more." Marcus, Jamie's older cousin who had recently moved in with them, leaned back in his chair with a skeptical look. "You think? Nobody gives away a house like that without strings attached." Jamie nodded, sitting cross-legged on the worn rug. "Yeah, Mom, it doesn't feel right. That guy, Charles, he wasn't just some delivery man. He looked like he could have been in the CIA or something." Gloria sighed, her eyes darting to the envelope. "I haven't opened this yet," she said, tapping the QONFIDENTIL label. "I wanted to wait until we were all here." A heavy silence filled the room as everyone stared at the envelope. Finally, Gloria picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly. She broke the seal and pulled out a crisp letter typed on thick, expensive paper. Her eyes scanned the words, her expression darkening with each line. "What does it say?" Marcus asked, leaning forward. Gloria's voice was quiet but firm as she read aloud. "Mrs. Davis, on behalf of the Harrison family, we extend our sincerest gratitude to your son, Jamie, for his bravery and selflessness. Enclosed, you will find the deed to a home in the Evergreen gated community. This offer is made with no expectation of repayment. It is simply a gesture of our appreciation. However, we must stress the importance of discretion. The Harrison name is a symbol of excellence and privacy. By accepting this offer, you and your family agree to maintain the confidentiality of our dealings. Should you decline, we will respect your decision. But please note that this opportunity is time-sensitive. The property will only remain available for the next 7 days. After that, the offer will be rescinded." The room fell into stunned silence. Marcus was the first to break it. "Confidentiality. Time-sensitive. This is starting to sound like a trap," he said, his voice laced with suspicion. Gloria set the letter down, her hands trembling. "I don't know what to do. This could change our lives. We could finally get out of this neighborhood. But—" Jamie cut in, his voice firm. "But what, Mom?" Gloria hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table. "But I've heard things about the Harrisons. They're powerful, yes, but they don't just give without expecting something in return. And if we say yes to this, we're putting ourselves under their thumb." Marcus let out a low whistle. "So, basically, we'd be trading one kind of trouble for another." Jamie couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to this than his mother was letting on. "Mom," he said carefully, "do you know them? Like, personally?" Gloria's eyes flicked to him, and for a moment, he thought she might lie. But then she sighed, the weight of whatever she was carrying finally too much to bear. "Yes," she admitted softly. "Years ago, I worked for them. For Richard Harrison, specifically." Jamie's stomach tightened. "What did you do for him?" I was a secretary, Gloria said, her voice distant. It was before I had you or Lily. He was starting out, trying to build his empire. I worked long hours, handling paperwork, managing schedules, but I also saw things I shouldn't have. Marcus sat up straighter. What kind of things? Gloria hesitated, her eyes darting to the windows as if checking for eavesdroppers. Shady deals. Documents that didn't add up. Richard Harrison is a genius businessman, but he's also ruthless. I learned quickly that crossing him wasn't an option. Jamie felt a chill run down his spine. Did you leave on bad terms? I left quietly, Gloria said, her voice trembling. But I took something with me, something I thought might protect me if he ever came after me. What? Jamie and Marcus asked in unison. Gloria hesitated, then reached into the briefcase and pulled out a smaller, hidden compartment. From it, she retrieved a USB drive encased in a sleek metal shell. She placed it on the table, her fingers hovering over it. This, she said. It's encrypted, but it contains files from Harrison's company. Proof of illegal activities, embezzlement, tax fraud, you name it. I thought if I ever needed leverage, this would be it. Marcus stared at the drive, his jaw clenched. So, this isn't about gratitude. This is about keeping you quiet. Gloria nodded. That's my guess. And now, with Jamie saving his child, it's like I'm back on his radar. Jamie felt a surge of anger. So he's trying to buy us off. Make us disappear into his little gated kingdom where he can control us. That's what it feels like, Gloria admitted. The room fell into uneasy silence again, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them. Finally, Marcus spoke. We can't accept this, he said firmly. Not the house, not anything. If we do, we're playing right into his hands. But what if we don't? Gloria countered. He's already watching us. Do you think he'll just let this go if we say no? Jamie clenched his fists. Then we fight back. Gloria looked at him, startled. Jamie, this isn't a game. These people are dangerous. I know, Jamie said, his voice steady. But we can't just roll over and let them control us. We have this, he pointed to the USB drive, and it's time we use it. Marcus smirked. The kid's got guts. I like it. Gloria, though visibly torn, finally nodded. All right, she said. But we have to be smart about this. No rash decisions. That night, as the family huddled together in their small living room, they began to form a plan. They didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. The Harrisons had underestimated them. The gilded cage. The Davis family's decision not to accept the Harrison family's offer sparked an unshakable tension in their home. Days passed, and the neighborhood seemed quieter than usual. Too quiet. Jamie noticed fewer cars on their street, fewer kids playing outside, and fewer neighbors stepping out onto their porches. The normal hum of life in their modest community had dulled into an eerie stillness. It felt as though the Harrison shadow loomed larger than ever. One evening, Jamie spotted the black car again. It was parked at the far end of their street, just beyond the glow of the flickering streetlight. Its sleek frame glinted faintly, almost as if it wanted to be noticed. He felt his chest tighten. Whoever was inside wasn't there by coincidence. They were watching. When Jamie mentioned it to Marcus, his cousin's jaw tightened. They're waiting for something, Marcus muttered, trying to scare us into submission. Gloria was growing increasingly paranoid. She double-checked the locks on their doors and windows every night and kept her phone close, though she rarely made calls. The USB drive was hidden away in an old shoebox beneath her bed, its presence a silent reminder of the precarious position they were in. That tension came to a head one night when a sharp knock echoed through the house. It was past midnight, and the noise jolted everyone awake. Jamie scrambled out of bed, his heart pounding as Gloria hurried to the window. She peeked through the curtain and froze. "Mom, who is it?" Jamie whispered, his voice shaking. Gloria turned, her face pale. "It's him." Jamie's stomach dropped. "Who?" "Charles Dorian," Gloria said quietly. "Harrison's man." Marcus appeared in the hallway, already pulling a hoodie over his head. "Let me handle this," he said, his voice calm but firm. He grabbed a baseball bat leaning against the wall and headed toward the door. "No, Marcus," Gloria hissed. "We can't escalate this." But Marcus didn't stop. He unlocked the door and swung it open, stepping outside with the bat resting casually on his shoulder. Charles stood on the porch, flanked by two other men in suits. The polished confidence in his demeanor didn't falter as he faced Marcus. "Good evening," Charles said smoothly, his hands clasped in front of him. "I hope I didn't wake the family." "You did," Marcus snapped. "What do you want?" Charles tilted his head slightly, unfazed by Marcus's aggression. "I've come to speak with Mrs. Davis. It's a matter of some urgency." "You can speak to me," Marcus retorted. "Whatever you've got to say, say it here." Charles's smile tightened. "I'm afraid this concerns Mrs. Davis specifically. It would be unwise to delay." Gloria appeared in the doorway then, her face drawn and weary. "I'm here," she said, stepping forward. "What do you want now?" Charles regarded her with a faint nod. "I'm here to remind you of the opportunity Mr. Harrison extended to your family. You notice you haven't taken any steps to accept it." Gloria crossed her arms, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "That's because we're not interested." A flicker of something dark passed through Charles's eyes, but his smile remained intact. "I would advise you to reconsider. Mr. Harrison is not a man who enjoys being ignored." Marcus tightened his grip on the bat, taking a step forward. "Is that a threat?" Charles glanced at Marcus with the faintest hint of disdain. "It's a reality, young man. Your family has caught Mr. Harrison's attention. That can be a blessing or a curse. The choice is yours." Gloria took a deep breath. "Tell Mr. Harrison we'll handle our own lives. We don't need his charity." Charles sighed, as though disappointed. "Very well. But do keep in mind, Mrs. Davis, that doors like these don't stay open forever." With that, he turned and walked back to the black car, his associates following closely. Marcus waited until the car disappeared around the corner before lowering the bat. "Mom," Jamie said softly, "this isn't over, is it?" Gloria shook her head. "No, Jamie. It's not." The next morning, Jamie woke to the sound of muffled voices. He crept downstairs to find Gloria and Marcus huddled over the kitchen table. The USB drive sat between them, along with a small, outdated laptop Marcus had dug out of the closet. "We have to know what's on here," Marcus was saying. "If it's enough to bring Harrison down, we can end this." Gloria hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the drive. "If we use it, he'll know. He'll come after us." "He's already coming after us," Marcus argued. "At least this way, we fight back." Jamie stepped into the room. "I'll do it." Both Gloria and Marcus turned to him, their expressions a mix of surprise and concern. "Jamie, this isn't your fight," Gloria said firmly. "Yes, it is," Jamie replied. "I'm the reason we're in this mess. I saved that baby, remember? If I hadn't, Harrison wouldn't even know we exist." Gloria opened her mouth to argue, but Marcus interrupted. "The kid's got a point." Gloria sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Fine, but we do this carefully. No risks." They plugged the USB drive into the laptop and waited as the screen flickered to life. A folder appeared, its name a string of random numbers and letters. Inside, they found dozens of files, spreadsheets, emails, transaction records, and even scanned legal documents. Marcus whistled low. "This is it. This is the kind of stuff that can destroy a guy like Harrison." Gloria leaned forward, her eyes scanning the documents. "Bank transfers, shell companies. He's been laundering money through fake charities." Jamie's stomach churned as he stared at the evidence. "What do we do with it?" "We take it to someone who can help," Gloria said. "The press, maybe. or the police. That's not going to be easy, Marcus pointed out. Harrison's got connections everywhere. If we go to the wrong person, this could backfire. Gloria nodded grimly. Then we need to be smart. We need to find someone we can trust. That night, as the Davis family tried to devise a plan, the tension in the air was almost suffocating. Gloria was pacing again, Marcus was scouring the internet for investigative journalists, and Jamie sat by the window, his gaze fixed on the street. The black car was back. This time, it wasn't parked at the far end of the street. It was right outside their house. Jamie's heart pounded as he watched the faint silhouette of a man sitting in the driver's seat. He couldn't see the man's face, but he felt the weight of his gaze. "They're watching us," Jamie said quietly, his voice cutting through the room. Gloria stopped pacing, and Marcus joined Jamie at the window. The sight of the car made his jaw clench. "That's it," Marcus said. "We need to act now." "Tonight?" Gloria asked, her voice tinged with fear. "Tonight," Marcus confirmed, before they tightened the noose any further. As the Davis family braced themselves for what lay ahead, Jamie couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than they could imagine. But one thing was clear: they weren't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The heart of the trap. The Davis family spent the next few hours in a flurry of quiet preparation. The air in their small home was electric with tension, every creak of the floorboards and distant hum of car engines sending a ripple of unease through them. The black car was still parked outside, its engine idling faintly, as if it were a predator waiting to strike. Gloria stood by the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she packed the USB drive into a small protective case. "This is our only leverage," she said quietly. "If we lose this, we lose everything." Marcus leaned against the counter, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "We won't lose it. We're going to end this tonight." Jamie, sitting on the couch with his knees pulled to his chest, looked up. "How? Harrison's people are everywhere. Even if we get the evidence out, how do we know it won't just disappear?" Marcus sighed, his jaw tight. "We don't. But doing nothing isn't an option anymore." Gloria walked over and crouched in front of Jamie, placing a gentle hand on his knee. "Jamie, you've already done so much. This isn't your burden to carry." "It is, Mom," Jamie said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "I saved that baby because it was the right thing to do. I can't stop doing the right thing now, just because it's hard." Gloria's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she pulled him into a tight hug. "You're braver than I ever was." Marcus cleared his throat. "All right, let's focus. We need a plan. A real plan." Gloria pulled back from Jamie, nodding as she stood. "We need someone who can make this public. Someone who isn't connected to Harrison." Marcus paced the room, his brow furrowed. "I've been looking into local journalists. There's one, Jessica Rivera. She's known for exposing corporate corruption. If anyone can help us, it's her." "Can we trust her?" Gloria asked. Marcus nodded. "She's got a reputation for taking down guys like Harrison. But we have to be careful. If Harrison's people catch wind of this, they'll shut us down before we get close." Jamie sat up straighter. "How do we get to her?" Marcus grabbed a piece of paper from the table and handed it to Gloria. "She's speaking at a charity event tonight downtown. Public place, lots of people. We can slip her the USB without drawing too much attention." Gloria's face was etched with worry. "It's risky. If Harrison finds out we're trying to expose him, he already knows we're a threat," Marcus said. "This is our best shot. The escape." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the Davis family put their plan into action. Gloria wrapped the USB drive in a thin layer of cloth and tucked it into her purse. Jamie and Marcus donned plain clothes, blending into the backdrop of their modest neighborhood. The black car was still outside, its presence a constant reminder of the danger they faced. "Stick to the plan," Marcus whispered as they prepared to leave. "We split up. Mom and Jamie take the back alley. I'll go out front and distract them. Gloria hesitated, her eyes darting to Marcus. Are you sure about this? Marcus grinned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I've been itching to mess with these guys. I'll be fine. Before Gloria could protest further, Marcus slipped out the front door, his hands stuffed into his pockets. Jamie and Gloria watched from the back window as Marcus strolled down the street, whistling casually. The door of the black car opened, and one of the men stepped out, his eyes narrowing as he tracked Marcus's movements. That's our cue, Gloria whispered, gripping Jamie's hand. They slipped out the back door, ducking into the shadows of the alleyway. The narrow path was littered with trash and debris, but it was their best chance at avoiding detection. Jamie's heart pounded as they moved swiftly through the alley. Every sound, the rustle of a stray cat, the distant hum of traffic, felt amplified, each one a potential threat. Gloria clutched her purse tightly, her eyes darting in every direction. Mom, Jamie whispered as they neared the main road. What if they catch Marcus? They won't, Gloria said, though her voice wavered. He's smart. He'll be okay. When they reached the end of the alley, Gloria paused, peering around the corner. The street ahead was busy, filled with the usual hustle of downtown life. They were close to the venue where Jessica Rivera was speaking, but the crowd also meant a greater risk of being spotted. Stay close, Gloria said, pulling Jamie into the throng of people. The handoff. The charity event was being held at a grand hotel, its marble facade glowing under the soft light of chandeliers visible through the tall windows. Gloria and Jamie entered through a side entrance, blending in with the flow of guests. They scanned the room, searching for Jessica Rivera. There, Jamie whispered, nodding toward the stage. Jessica stood at the podium, addressing the crowd with confidence and poise. Her words carried the weight of conviction, and it was clear she was someone who wouldn't be easily intimidated. Gloria squeezed Jamie's hand. Wait here. I'll go to her. Jamie watched as his mother made her way through the crowd, her movements careful but determined. He felt his pulse quicken as she approached the stage, waiting for the perfect moment to speak to Jessica. But just as Gloria reached the edge of the stage, Jamie's blood ran cold. From the corner of his eye, he saw a familiar figure enter the room, Charles Dorian. He was scanning the crowd, his expression calm but calculating. Mom, Jamie hissed under his breath, but she couldn't hear him over the chatter of the crowd. Charles's eyes locked onto Gloria, just as she slipped the USB drive into Jessica's hand. Jamie saw the flicker of recognition on his face, the subtle tightening of his jaw. Charles raised a hand, signaling to two other men in suits who were stationed near the entrance. Jamie's heart raced. He had to act fast. The diversion. Without thinking, Jamie grabbed a tray of drinks from a passing waiter and deliberately bumped into one of the suited men. Glasses crashed to the floor, and the man spun around, glaring at Jamie. Sorry, Jamie said, feigning innocence. He ducked past the man, weaving through the crowd as he tried to draw their attention away from Gloria. Charles noticed the commotion and gestured for the men to follow Jamie. The boy darted through the room, his small size allowing him to slip between clusters of guests with ease. He could hear the heavy footsteps of the men behind him, their voices low but urgent. Stop that kid, one of them barked. Jamie didn't stop. He burst through a side door and into a narrow hallway, his breath coming in short gasps. He knew he couldn't outrun them forever, but he also knew he couldn't let them get to his mom or the USB. The escape plan. Meanwhile, Gloria had slipped out of the venue unnoticed. Jessica Rivera, now holding the USB drive, gave her a subtle nod of understanding before disappearing into the crowd. Gloria hurried down the street, her heart pounding as she searched for Jamie. Marcus, who had managed to evade the men watching the house, appeared around the corner just as Gloria emerged from the venue. Where's Jamie? He asked, his voice urgent. Gloria's face was pale. He's inside. He created a diversion. Marcus cursed under his breath. I'll find him. You get to safety." As Marcus disappeared into the building, Gloria could only pray that her sons would make it out unscathed. She clutched her purse tightly, knowing that their fight against the Harrisons was far from over. But for the first time, they had a chance to strike back. Breaking the chains. The night had taken on a surreal quality for Jamie. His chest burned as he darted through the dimly lit corridors of the Grand Hotel, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind him, the pounding of heavy footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously off the walls. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep this up, but he knew he had to buy his family enough time to escape. The hotel's back hallway led to an emergency stairwell. Without hesitation, Jamie yanked the door open, the cold metallic handle biting into his palm. He sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time, the sound of pursuit never far behind. As he reached the 3rd floor, he paused, leaning against the wall to catch his breath. His heart thundered in his chest, the echoes of it nearly drowning out the faint voices below. "He went this way," one of the men shouted. The sound of the stairwell door slamming shut reverberated upward, and Jamie knew they were close. He had to think fast. Spotting an open door to his right, Jamie ducked inside. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the city lights streaming through the window. It appeared to be a supply closet, cluttered with cleaning equipment and stacks of linens. Jamie crouched behind a shelf, his mind racing. "What now?" he thought. "They're going to find me." His hand brushed against a broom handle, and an idea flickered in his mind. Grabbing the broom, he positioned it horizontally just above the entrance. He braced himself, every nerve in his body taut with anticipation. The door burst open moments later, slamming against the wall as one of Harrison's men entered. His sharp eyes scanned the room, but he stepped forward without looking up. Jamie waited until the man was directly beneath him, then swung the broom handle down with all his strength. The man grunted in pain as the handle struck the back of his head. He stumbled forward, crashing into a stack of cleaning supplies. Jamie didn't wait to see if he was unconscious. He bolted out of the room, leaving the groaning man behind. The showdown. Meanwhile, Marcus had slipped into the hotel unnoticed. He moved with purpose, scanning every hallway and room he passed. His stomach churned with anxiety. He'd seen the men chasing Jamie, and he knew his cousin was in danger. But Marcus was determined to find him, and take the fight to the Harrisons if necessary. As he turned a corner, he caught sight of Charles Dorian standing at the far end of the corridor. The man was calm, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in a low, deliberate tone. Behind him, 2 more of Harrison's men stood guard. Marcus gritted his teeth. He knew confronting Charles directly was risky, but he didn't care. He strode toward them, his steps deliberate and heavy. The guards noticed him first, their postures stiffening. "Not a step closer," one of them barked, raising a hand. Marcus stopped, raising his hands mockingly. "Relax. I'm just here to talk." Charles ended his call and turned to face Marcus, his expression cool and unreadable. "Ah, Mr. Davis, how bold of you to show yourself." Marcus smirked. "Bold? No, this is me being polite. I figured we should have a little chat." Charles's lips curved into a thin smile. "You and your family have been rather troublesome. You do realize that Mr. Harrison has been more than generous, don't you?" "Generous?" Marcus scoffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You mean controlling, intimidating. Yeah, we've noticed." Charles's smile faltered slightly. "Let me make something clear, Mr. Davis. You and your family are playing a dangerous game, and games like these don't end well for people who overestimate their importance." Marcus took a step closer, his fists clenched. "And let me make something clear, Charles. My family doesn't back down. Not to Harrison. Not to you. We've got everything we need to expose him, and no amount of threats will stop us." Charles's expression darkened, but before he could respond, a commotion erupted further down the corridor. Both men turned to see Jamie sprinting toward them, pursued by 2 more guards. Marcus's heart leaped into his throat as he saw the fear on Jamie's face. "Marcus," Jamie yelled, skidding to a halt beside him. "About time," Marcus muttered, stepping in front of Jamie protectively. He glared at Charles. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" Charles's voice was cold and measured. "You should consider yourself lucky, Mr. Davis. If it weren't for Mr. Harrison's patience, you'd already be." Marcus didn't let him finish. With a sudden burst of movement, he grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and hurled it at the nearest guard. The heavy object struck the man's chest, knocking him backward. Chaos erupted as the other guard lunged toward Marcus, but Jamie stepped in, grabbing the broom handle he brought with him and swinging it like a bat. "Nice move," Marcus said as Jamie connected with the guard's knee, sending him crumpling to the ground. Charles took a step back, his calm facade finally cracking. "Enough of this," he snapped, pulling out his phone. "We're done playing games." But before he could make the call, a sharp voice rang out behind them. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Jessica Rivera stepped into view, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She held up her phone, the screen glowing faintly. "I've been recording everything for the last 5 minutes. I wonder how the press would react to seeing Mr. Harrison's enforcer threatening a family." Charles's jaw tightened, his hand lowering. "Ms. Rivera, you're overstepping." Jessica smiled coolly. "Overstepping? No, I think I'm finally stepping in the right direction. The Davis family came to me with evidence, real evidence, of Harrison's crimes. And now, thanks to you, I have footage to back it up." Jamie felt a wave of relief wash over him. For the first time in days, it felt like they had the upper hand. The aftermath. The days following the hotel incident were a whirlwind. Jessica Rivera released an expose detailing Richard Harrison's corrupt empire, complete with the evidence from Gloria's USB drive and the video she captured at the hotel. The story made national headlines, and authorities launched an investigation into Harrison's dealings. For the Davis family, life slowly began to return to normal. They stayed in their small house, refusing to be uprooted by Harrison's manipulations. The black car no longer haunted their street, and Gloria finally allowed herself to breathe. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Marcus turned to Jamie. "You know," he said, "for a kid, you've got more guts than most adults I know." Jamie grinned. "You're not so bad yourself." Gloria watched her son with pride. "You saved a life, Jamie. And then you saved us. I don't know how I'll ever thank you." "You already have, Mom," Jamie said. "We're together. That's all that matters." As the sun set over their neighborhood, the Davis family knew they had faced down giants and won, not just for themselves, but for everyone who'd ever been silenced by people like Harrison. They were no longer afraid. They were free. The road to freedom. Despite the initial wave of relief following the public exposure of Richard Harrison's corruption, the days that followed were fraught with tension. The Davis family couldn't shake the feeling that the storm wasn't over yet. Harrison was too powerful, too connected to simply fade into the shadows without a fight. The media firestorm had painted Harrison as a villain, but it also revealed just how deep his influence ran. Even as investigative agencies announced they were looking into the allegations, Harrison's public relations team was working overtime to clean up his image. Statements of denial flooded the news, blaming the Davis family for fabricating the evidence as part of a personal vendetta. For Jamie, the weight of it all was crushing. He spent hours watching the news, his stomach twisting at each segment that downplayed the evidence they'd risked so much to expose. "Why isn't this enough?" he asked one evening, his voice raw with frustration. "We gave them everything. Why aren't they doing more?" Gloria sat beside him on the couch, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "Because people like Harrison don't go down easily," she said softly. "But that doesn't mean we give up. We just have to keep fighting." Marcus, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, nodded. "The guy's squirming. That means he's scared. We've got him on the ropes. We just need one more push to knock him out. Jamie glanced at Marcus. What kind of push? Marcus's lips curved into a sly smile. Something he can't deny. Something public, something big. The missing link. Late that night, Jamie couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, his mind replaying the events of the past week. The black car. The USB drive. Charles's threats. The constant danger had turned his life upside down, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. Something that could finally bring Harrison to his knees. He got up quietly, careful not to wake Lily, and made his way to the kitchen. The USB drive sat on the table, its metal casing catching the faint glow of the moonlight streaming through the window. Jamie picked it up, turning it over in his hands. What else are you hiding? He whispered to himself. Gloria had told them that the files contained proof of Harrison's financial crimes, but Jamie wondered if there was more. He plugged the USB into the family's old laptop and began scrolling through the files again. Most of the documents were spreadsheets and emails, but one folder caught his eye. It was labeled Eagle Project, a name he hadn't noticed before. When he opened the folder, his breath hitched. Inside were blueprints for a luxury high-rise project in the heart of the city, a project that, according to the dates, had been completed years ago. But attached to the blueprints were emails discussing shortcuts taken during construction. Materials were replaced with cheaper alternatives, safety inspections were falsified, and bribes had been paid to city officials to approve the project. Jamie's heart pounded as he realized the implications. The building wasn't just a symbol of Harrison's wealth. It was a potential disaster waiting to happen. If this information went public, it wouldn't just be about financial crimes anymore. It would be about endangering lives. He hurried to wake Marcus and Gloria, his hands shaking as he explained what he found. This is it, Jamie said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. This is the missing piece. Gloria's face paled as she read the emails. If this is true, if the building isn't safe, then Harrison's empire isn't just corrupt, Marcus finished. It's deadly. The final blow. The Davis family reached out to Jessica Rivera again, explaining what they'd discovered. Jessica's response was immediate and firm. This changes everything. If these allegations are true, we're talking about criminal negligence on a massive scale. Jessica arranged a press conference to reveal the new information. It was scheduled to take place in front of the high-rise itself, a dramatic backdrop that would ensure maximum visibility. The Davis family insisted on attending, despite the risks. On the day of the conference, the atmosphere was electric. Reporters and camera crews swarmed the area, their microphones pointed at Jessica as she prepared to speak. The Davis family stood off to the side, their presence a silent reminder of the stakes. As Jessica began detailing the findings, including the falsified safety reports and the use of substandard materials, a ripple of shock swept through the crowd. But just as she was about to present the evidence, the roar of engines cut through the air. A fleet of black cars pulled up to the curb, their windows tinted so dark that it was impossible to see inside. The doors opened in unison, and men in suits emerged, their faces grim and unyielding. At the center of the group was Richard Harrison himself. The crowd fell silent as Harrison approached the podium. His gaze swept over the reporters, then settled on Jessica. "This is nothing but a baseless smear campaign," he said, his voice calm and commanding. "The Davis family and Ms. Rivera are spreading lies to tarnish my reputation. I won't stand for it." Jessica didn't flinch. "If it's baseless, Mr. Harrison, why don't you address the evidence?" She turned to the screen behind her, where the blueprints and emails were displayed for all to see. Harrison's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. "I've already explained these so-called documents to the proper authorities. They've been taken out of context." Jamie, unable to stay silent, stepped forward. "Out of context? You mean the part where you cut corners and put people's lives at risk? How do you explain that?" Harrison's eyes narrowed. "And who are you, boy?" a child playing hero. "I'm the kid who saved your baby," Jamie shot back, his voice ringing out. "And I'm not scared of you." The crowd erupted into murmurs, cameras flashing as reporters scrambled to capture the moment. Harrison's calm facade cracked for just a moment, his expression twisting into one of barely concealed rage. Jessica seized the moment. "Mr. Harrison, if you have nothing to hide, why not allow an independent investigation of the building's safety?" Harrison didn't respond. Instead, he turned sharply and walked away, his entourage following closely behind. The damage, however, was done. Justice at last. The fallout was swift. Under immense public pressure, city officials ordered a thorough inspection of the high-rise. The findings were damning. Structural weaknesses, faulty wiring, and numerous code violations. The building was evacuated immediately, and Harrison's empire began to crumble. For the Davis family, the victory was bittersweet. They had won, but it had come at a cost. Their lives had been upended, their safety threatened, and their trust in the world shaken. But they had also found something stronger than fear: their courage and their unity as a family. One evening, as the sun set over their small neighborhood, Jamie sat on the porch with Marcus and Gloria. The black cars were gone. The shadows that had haunted them finally lifted. "You did good, kid," Marcus said, clapping Jamie on the back. "You took on a giant and won." Jamie smiled faintly. "We did it together." Gloria pulled them both into a hug, her voice soft but full of pride. "No matter what happens next, we're stronger now. No one can take that from us." As the stars began to twinkle overhead, the Davis family sat together, knowing they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. For the first time in what felt like forever, they were free.